Think we got solid control.
It's Alan. Oh, perfect.
Hi, Alan.
We can put you right there.
Great to have you.
Yeah, that's not gonna be there.
Are we live now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
All right, we are now live and
We can put you right there.
great to have you.
Yeah, that's not gonna be there.
Are we live now?
Yeah, cool.
Sorry. All right, thank you. Welcome everybody to the April edition of the Downtown Advisory Board. That is our welcome and call to order. So we'll take attendance here. Myself, I'm President Charles Weathers,
Here.
Kirk Sund,
Here.
Alan Pollock,
Here.
Rory McManus,
Here.
Kiana Chase, not present, Lori Miller, not present, Ernesto Toscovich, not present, and Angie Oven. 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 Okay. Thank you. And then, I don't know if this is a point of order, but Kirk, we're gonna change your name to Sunday permanently. That's
Trying to do
good.
that for a long time.
Yeah.
That works. Yes, naturally. And then moving forward to agenda item number 3, the approval of our agenda. Any questions?
James too.
Any changes?
Move to approve our agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the approval of our agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those not, nay. Motion carries. Moving forward to agenda item number 4, the approval of minutes from our January 23rd meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the approval of minutes from our January 23rd meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those not, nay. Motion carries. Moving forward to agenda item number 5, public comment. Appearance of persons wishing to address the board on any matter other than those which appear on the agenda. Is there any public comment today? No, there is not. Agenda item number 6, action items. A, there are none. Moving forward to agenda item number 7, information reports. A, the Center Street Bridge seismic retrofit project. We have Anna Henson here from the Oregon Department of Transportation. Anna, you have the floor.
It will be Anna, but it'll be Andrew. I'll answer to Anna if that's how.
Oh, you're Anna.
Or Andrew, whichever.
Andrew, welcome.
What's your last name, Hanson?
And,
No, neither name.
and you're from ODOT?
I am, I'm the project manager.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hold my presentation up there. So yeah, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Walker, with the Oregon Department of Transportation. I'm the project manager for the Center Street Bridge seismic retrofit project. Joined by Bob Goodrich. He's the project manager for the consultant who's helping us with the design with Dow. Next slide. Just a quick agenda items for what I'll talk about today. I'm going to give kind of a high level overview of the project, what's encompassed in the project, sort of the scope and the things we hope to accomplish during construction. Then I'll go over a project schedule, talk about where we're at in design, right away, and then with the construction schedule as well, or when we anticipate construction. I'll hit anticipated items, mostly focusing on what we expect to see during construction, some of those impacts that we'll have during construction. Then talk about the construction schedule specifically, when we expect to see some of those items occur, and then give some time at the end for questions. So just to start with kind of a high level overview of what the project is, what it encompasses, what it doesn't encompass, what it will do in the future and what it won't. This project was initiated in House Bill 2017 when it was allocated $60 million to accomplish this seismic retrofit for the project. We did an advanced investigation, which kind of gave us an idea what we think that seismic retrofit will look like. When we actually picked the project up and started design, and did some geotechnical analysis of either banks and river as well, we found out that the east side was a little bit worse than we had anticipated. It has what's called liquefiable soil, so during an earthquake, the soil liquefies or basically turns to mush. Making it not really feasible for a traditional seismic retrofit, which would just be strengthening existing members, improving the foundations, that type of thing. And if we were to try and retrofit it, we would basically be building a new bridge next to the existing bridge and then transferring the bridge onto it. And so given that information, it made more sense to do a replacement. And given a replacement, it made more sense to do further analysis. There's existing issues on the west side, many people are probably familiar with, traffic issues and other things. And if we're replacing the bridge, we want to make sure that we're replacing a facility we're comfortable with for the next 100 years or so. And so in that line of thought, we split the project in two so that phase one could continue, that we wouldn't delay the project, while we analyze phase two more thoroughly, but keep the retrofit going and do what we can now to get that as much retrofitted now as we can. And so that's how we kind of came up with the phase one and phase two and how that came to fruition. Phase one includes the retrofit of the river spans in the east approach, as well as the southbound ramp. So you can see that in the light blue there on the right side of your screen. It includes the city water line. So the City of Salem currently has 3 water lines that supply West Salem, none of which are seismically resilient. So in the case of an earthquake, it's very likely that West Salem would be without water. So it made sense working with the City of Salem to include the water line that's currently on the bridge in our project to make it seismically resilient. As part of that, we agreed also to upsize that pipe, so increasing capacity to West Salem. Right now, it's a 24-inch water line. We'd be increasing it to a 36-inch water line for City of Salem. So not only increasing resilience, but also capacity for West Salem. You probably noticed that the entire bridge is not being retrofitted in phase one. So the question we get often is, well, what happens if an earthquake happens between phase one and phase two? And that's really what the emergency response plan is intended to address. That would address not only like emergency services and how we coordinate those with the greater statewide plan, but as well as how would we reestablish that connection, because it's likely that the sections that are in phase two would be damaged and unserviceable. And so how would we get the rest of the bridge back up in use as quickly as possible? And so that's something we're having Dowell, our consultant, look at now. How would we do that? There's a few options that we've considered, whether it's Bailey bridges, which is kind of like an erector set bridge that you can put together quickly, or whether we stockpile fill material and equipment to get that back up and running in an emergency situation. But we're still looking into that. That's part of what we're looking at in phase one. And then it also includes the analysis of phase two, or the study of phase two. What is the appropriate solution to retrofit or replace, really, but we're still calling it a retrofit. The intention is to retrofit and make it seismically resilient. So Dow will be looking at this as well. Phase two would include a replacement of a portion or all of the west approaches. It's time dependent, so one of the reasons we want to do this study is so that we can get a cost and a timeline for phase two. One thing when we're allocating funding is, number one question is, well, how much does it cost? And it's hard to know that until we know what we want to do and when we want to do it. So we'll be working on that answer. We anticipate impacts when we do phase two to be similar to phase one. The work would be similar in nature. Next slide. One more slide. Yeah, there you go.
I gotta go through those.
No, go back one. Go back,
I'll go back one.
2. There you go, right there.
Sorry.
So as I mentioned, phase two is in that liquefiable soil that's really difficult to retrofit. And so this kind of transition between phase one and phase two actually occurs on that west bank. And so the solution there is to essentially replace the foundation that connects those two. There's a bent there. It'll be 2 new drilled shafts. And then we'll demo the existing foundation. So we'll transfer the current bridge onto those 2 new drilled shafts, and then we'll demo the existing foundation. It's going to be similar to Abernathy. I'm not sure how many people here are familiar with that project, but Abernathy has taken a similar approach to their retrofit solutions. They've done new drilled shafts. These drilled shafts will be a little bit smaller than Abernathy's, but it'll be similar in scope or what it'll look like. We're calling it a super vent instead of that idea creating a bed outside of the existing foundation and then connecting the bridge back into it. Next slide. So within the water, we are strengthening the existing foundations. We're doing that by enlarging the existing foundations and adding additional driven piles into the soil there. All of this will be below ground, below water, so none of it will be visible when we're done. Once we're done with construction, you won't see any of the work that we've done. It's all substructure as far as the strengthening of the foundations there. So the columns that go up to the bridge will look the same as they do now, and maintaining that aesthetic feature that's there today. Next slide. Next step. On the east side, there's a number of things we're doing to strengthen and enlarge footings, pier walls, ground anchors, additional steel driven piles, larger footings, those types of things to make this more stable, as well as throughout the bridge, strengthening some of the superstructure. Slide. And then, as I mentioned before, the water line. One thing to note on this water line is that the water line that is on the bridge is all within phase one. So when we're done with phase one, at least the water line within the bridge section will be seismically resilient. So that's one side that isn't being affected by this phasing. Slide. So here's kind of our schedule for design, permitting, and so forth. We're currently in design. We're pretty hot on design right now. It's a very aggressive schedule, so just an asterisk on that this can change. Things come up during design or right away acquisitions, that kind of thing, slow a project down. But we're currently on schedule, and we anticipate to finish design into this year and bid the project early next year. With that, we would expect construction to be completed sometime in 2029. So it's a 3 to 4 year construction project. If we get it started early next year, that's what we expect. So,
Andrew, you mentioned acquisitions. Are there any acquisitions as part of the scope of project?
no, that's a good question. Acquisitions are mostly temporary easements, so nothing we would actually be taking property, but we would be using property, and most of it's within city property.
Got
it. So that's a good question. We'd be working mostly within the parks, so there's a couple of private properties we're looking at. For temporary. No permit.
Thank you. Hi, Ernesto.
Well, there's one from the city that's an easement. For the new drill shafts have permit easement on them with the city, but nothing significant.
Ernesto, we're at agenda item 7A.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just to allow us to access those new vents. We're expanding the footing wider, and so we just need access to those for these purposes. So it'd be a permanent easement from the city. Okay, next slide. So some anticipated impacts during construction. Next. The first one to note is temporary structures. So there's a couple that would be most obvious during construction. One is the temporary work bridges. There'd be work bridges coming from either side. That's kind of the long orange rectangles that are noted there. These would be to access the foundations that are within the water. And then for the foundations that are within the water, we'd be building coffer dams around them to isolate them from the river. So we can de-water those coffer dams and then work on those foundations. Again, this will look pretty similar to what's out at Abernathy. Not exactly, but they're using coffer dams and work bridges on there. So if you wanted to get an idea of what they'll look like, that's a great project. Some of the allegorical project similar in scope. Fine. Tree removals. One thing to emphasize on this item is that we really did try to keep as many trees as physically possible. You'll notice the circles are just adjacent to the bridge. We worked with the city pretty extensively on maintaining every tree that was physically possible. Most of the tree removals are just related to the cranes and the booms. You can't swing a crane boom through a tree. So there's a lot of removals associated with that. And just the areas strictly adjacent to it. But even within those, we identified some specific trees we might be able to save and protect as many roots as we can. Sort of a silver lining on this is that we will be replanting all of these trees. Some of these trees would likely die in the near future anyways, like Oregon ash. It's a disease that's going through that's wiping out throughout Oregon. So we'd be replacing the ones that are there with a native species that's more resilient. Some of the trees within the parking lot are already struggling because because the soil wells that they're in are too small and the species that's there. And so we're working with the city to pick out better species that are better suited for that parking lot. And expand those soil wells so those trees can be healthy and better in the future. So the trees that we're replanting will be better in the future, but obviously. Next slide. This is one for traffic impacts. There's a couple major ones to note. One is some nighttime full closures. This would occur on weekends in the evenings for up to 2 days at a time. Expecting, maybe a few times we need to do this for some of the joint work. It happened between maybe the hours between 10 and 4 o'clock in the evening, so 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Not during any rush hours for full-time closures. We'd route freight traffic either north or south. We would go to Newburgh or Denver, so the two crossings that are adequate for freight traffic. The one that's a little more extensive is the lane closures. We're looking to close 2 of the 4 lanes. For somewhere between 3 and 4 months at a time. It will create additional traffic. We have plans to accommodate emergency services during both of these traffic impacts. We've tried to reduce the lane closures as much as possible, but there's just no way around working on the bridge while traffic is active on the bridge. There's no space to do so. And so just for scope or for kind of a perspective on how much we've reduced it, we're going to be working on this bridge for 3 to 4 years, but only reducing lanes, for 3 to 4 months. So we've really worked as hard as we can to reduce that.
So the nighttime full closures, there'd be no access for West Salem to cross the bridge from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
Correct.
Those closures.
Yeah. Emergency services would still have access. We're gonna dedicate a lane on Marion Street Bridge, going the wrong way, essentially, to allow them across, the general public will not have access. It'll be detoured north or south. If you're not, a large truck, you'd probably end up going to Independence if you're local, but our detour routes will not be signed accordingly. Because we don't want freight trucks using that route. They get stuck there at least once a week. Yeah, so we'll add more signs to what's already there, discouraging trucks. We've even talked about adding a flagger there to flag them off. For those, just for the full closures.
Can you open that historic bridge, the railroad bridge?
The railroad bridge, for general public.
I mean.
It'll be open for pedestrians and bicyclists, but for vehicles, it's really not.
It's not. I
There-
thought
there's
for
some-
emergency vehicles.
Some emergency vehicles potentially could use it. It doesn't, we're already gonna accommodate them as the plan. But there's some vertical clearance issues with it already, and then the deck was designed for larger vehicles, but the rest of the bridge has some adequacy issues.
Okay.
That's a good question. So yeah, we don't plan to utilize Union Street, or the railroad bridge there to the north of Marion. Next slide. There'll be a couple of ramp closures associated with joint work and with the lane closures. You'd still have access, so I consider this a more minor impact. You might have to go around the block instead of accessing Front Street directly or something like that, but it wouldn't be a closure of access to downtown from West Salem. Next slide. So a couple of asterisks on this slide before I go into it. This is a feasible construction method, but pretty much every project I've ever bid, the contractor had their own flavor on how they'd like to approach the construction. So ODA sort of responsibility is to develop a feasible construction method that can be built, but contractors have their own ideas, and so it'll likely look like this, but probably not be exactly this, but this is what we anticipate right now. So in 2026, we would start some of the water line relocation work. Not only on so the bridge has a water line, but then the water line goes underground on either side of the bridge. And it conflicts with some of the foundations that are there, so we do some water line relocation work ahead of time so that we can work on those foundations. One of the things the contractor is most likely gonna want to get started on right away is the temporary structures that are associated with this project. So that'd be like those coffer dams and work bridges, because that's all in water work and they want to get that done as quickly as possible, because there's only certain times in which they can do that, so that'll be a critical path for them. It's possible the contractor doesn't do that first, but that particular item I think is likely to happen in 2026. 2027, you'd start to see some of the construction work on that east side, working on some of those foundations and strengthening the structures there. And then they would start on some of the in-water work, so working on the foundations that are in the water after they've done some of those temporary structures. 2028, continuing that east side work, working on the Wallace side, and then the water line upgrades. And then 2029, we finish up the east side work and strengthening, and then reconstruct that parking lot, something I didn't actually mention earlier. So the areas on the riverfront that we're gonna be working on, we'll be using for construction activities, cranes and that type of thing. Basically the area directly adjacent to the bridge on the east side. We'll be reconstructing the parking lot that we impact because it's likely we'll have some damage to the pavement surfaces there from our construction activity. So that section will be brand new parking lot, so that's another benefit of it. It's already in moderate condition. There's a lot of upheaval from the roots there and damage to the parking lot from its age already, so this is maybe one of the benefits of the project, getting a new section of parking. Next slide. That said, this is my contact information, happy to answer questions now. But if you do think anything afterwards or something comes up that you heard about the project later, please feel free to contact me, I'm always available to enjoy interacting and help and answer questions about the project. So my phone number and email are both listed there. And then you can sign up for our email updates if you scan the QR code there. Give updates once a month or every other month, just on where the project's at. Interesting things, and you can sign up for updates on all of our projects, so actually give you an option. So I think that's
One trivia question. You mentioned making this resilient for the next 100 years. How long's the current bridge been around?
around. That's
When's the last time there was major work given?
that's a more of a trick question than you might know, or maybe you do know actually. So the bridge has a number of different ages associated with it. The river spans were built in the 80s, am I right on that? Yeah, in the 80s. There was a bridge there before that, and it was replaced in the 80s. But some of the stuff on the west side, some of the ramps there had not quite 100 years yet, but they're getting close. So it just depends on which structure, but I'd say the majority of what most people would consider the bridge is from the 80s.
What is the impact on the water lines and the water supply to West Salem during the water line work?
That's a good question too. So
You said you have 3 lines.
there's 3 lines. So West Salem will continue to have water access, and we did work with the city on, what capacity they have on other water lines and when they could accommodate that. Because we would have to close that water line for a period of time. That's a good question. West Salem should not have water, like they should continue to have water. That's the plan.
I live in South Salem. So sorry.
Yeah.
So on the water, I have a comment. Water, increasing it to 36-inch.
Sure.
But on the west side, does it feed back into then a 24-inch? What does that do?
I don't actually know the answer to what water lines they have available there. I think it is 24 inch.
to 24.
So it's really, I think on the east side, there's 24 it's feeding into as well, but it's really allowing. They're putting different, like it can feed more than one water line, right? So that's one idea. So even if they have 24 inch, they might have 2 24 inches in the future, but it's just forward thinking for future development. And they don't want this to be a critical path. It's a lot easier for them to upgrade with what's on their property or in other areas as opposed to on the bridge. And so it's really forward thinking, but it's a good question.
And so we talk a lot about Center Street Bridge, so Marion Street. So is that already earthquake resilient, or is that the project after this?
So when this, in 2017, when the House bill was put into action to fund this project, they looked at both of those bridges and Marion Street, the age and just the structure type and what's there just wasn't feasible for retrofit. So I don't think there's any plans to retrofit in the future, and it's not size.
So some plan in place.
Maybe.
Or
Let's show one-way traffic.
That's maybe a political question.
Cars.
I guess it's part of the emergency plan.
We might
Marion
have,
Street Bridge, Center Street that become 2-way.
yeah, that's actually a really good question. I didn't clarify that. right? So the idea would be to support two-way traffic in a bridge. It's not gonna support general public traffic. Obviously, we have traffic issues now with two bridges, I mean, one bridge, two-way is not gonna do that, but it'll at least allow access while we address whatever fallout from that. But yeah, there's plans for the way that's on the section.
Will the Gilbert House be affected? Also West Salem boat ramp?
Both good questions. So there's a couple of laws that apply to protecting historical resources like Gilbert House, and there's 106 and 4F. And from those perspectives, we will not have an impact on Gilbert House, but we will be working adjacent to it. And so we talked with the director recently about Gilbert House, and we presented to the Historic Landmark Commission just recently to coordinate with them. I actually think there might be a benefit to Gilbert House. Maybe that's a glass half full kind of perspective, but there's a couple things I think will benefit. One, I think construction's interesting for kids. I got 4 of them and they love construction. And we talked with the director about potentially coordinating our construction activities, keeping them informed so that they could create an exhibit. They actually have a really good view of the construction activities. So if we told them, hey, we're gonna be putting in a cofferdam, this is what a cofferdam is, we could give a printout or something that they can put in that exhibit. So kids could have a view of it and actually track what's going on in it. You know, that's a bobcat, that's an excavator, that's a, 100-ton crane, something like that. My kids would really dig it. So I think that could be a benefit. Gilbert House mentioned that they're thinking about putting in a coffee shop access on Water Street there. Construction workers drink a lot of coffee, so they have I think they would have a pretty good customer base for a few years, right? And then the third one I think is actually a real good benefit. We actually have annual passes to Gilbert House for my kids, and parking is always an issue. There's this section we call the PGE lot, but it's a parking lot where you pay currently. So the free parking is always full. You can go pay if you want, but I'm super cheap, so I always park in the riverfront parking. And we proposed to the city making that whole parking lot free as sort of a mitigation for the parking we're taking out of the riverfront. And so most of the time, parking's not full, but the Gilbert House parking is always full. And so this could potentially provide quite a bit of extra parking and maybe a little to the business. So that's my argument for Gilbert House. For the boat ramp, which is also a good question, one that's actually important for 4F and 6F. We intend to keep it open at all times. The contractor will have access to it if they need to use it, just like any general public access would, but they're not allowed to close it or hinder its use to anybody. And there will be a navigable channel kept open on the work bridge. So if you saw our work bridge has a gap in it, contractor of course would prefer to have a consistent one so that they can take equipment across it. But for like the stern wheeler that's there, they would have access to that area, keeping it open for water. So yeah, those are good questions. Thank you.
What's the communication plan to the general public? I've already seen some stuff come out in earlier, it's great, but it's gonna be so problematic and there's a lot of fear, I think, associated with it too.
With the traffic impacts, which
Yeah, real or perceived, but certainly very real.
I think there'll be some real ones.
What's the plan?
So I mean, we're already doing this is part of our outreach now, right? I think the last couple months I've done somewhere around 30 to 35, maybe 40 presentations, just depends on.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'd be getting better. I'm not sure if that's the case. But we have a pretty extensive email list that we developed. So every time we give a presentation or we did an open house, we provide that email QR link where you can consistently get our email updates to tell you when we do plan to do closures, at least a month ahead of time. We're gonna do a pretty big public push to make sure the public's aware. We've been working with Chariots a little bit.
Oh, he's the boss.
Yeah, I know our ops guy.
Okay, yeah, they have a program, transportation options is another one to try and help reduce, it's not gonna eliminate, but give people other options on how they can get across to reduce that traffic at those high peak hours. So I guess the answer is, we're gonna communicate as much as we can with the public. We'll put signs out ahead of time. So anybody that is commuting over that every day was gonna see signs at least a month ahead of time telling them, hey, X, Y day. It's gonna be rough. You can telecommute, take a different route, ride your bike, take bus, whatever. We recommend it, so I guess that's kind of our initial plan on how to communicate that.
City of Independence might institute a poll.
Hey,
Toll.
Toll.
They can poll them as they were told.
Yeah.
Tolling has not been super popular in Oregon. I don't know if they get a poll to figure out its popularity, but.
Right in the Newburgh may not be.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Andrew? Andrew, thank you.
Yeah.
Very much. You have your hands full. Sorry we didn't have any design questions, but
No worries.
we figured we'd.
Andrew's got it covered.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we have two more information reports. The next one is going to be the Marriott parking structure.
Yes.
You're interpreting and Daniel Robb, CB2, or Daniel. The floor is yours, Daniel.
All right. Full screen now. I can see if I can stretch that. I'll see if we can get that bigger.
The little box. I have to stretch it. Let's see. Oh.
Okay. You can make it smaller.
Hold on.
Make it smaller.
Okay. We will make it work. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Roth. I am an architect at CB2, working with Kirk and with Aaron Turpinning, who is the principal in charge of this project. This project is a retrofit or a remodel of a few different scope items on this building, all with the goal of promoting user safety here. So currently, the main, I'll get into this with the renderings that I'm going to show in a bit, but the main thing that we are going to be doing is taking these 4 corner towers on each corner of the parkade, removing them and replacing them with open air stair structures. The main idea of that is that we are trying to create a more transparent, lively, safe structure for people to use. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So, as I alluded to, kind of main project goals, this is all surrounding user safety. So we want people to feel like they are, they don't need to like look over their shoulder as they're walking through the parking garage or turning a corner and seeing something that they don't really want to see. There have been a lot of instances of transient people sleeping in here or using the stairwells for illicit means. So trying to open that space up, remove that potential, allow you to walk to your car or walk to the mall, feeling safe. Along with that, we have a goal to, from the city public works side, reducing maintenance. So if you don't have people sleeping or hanging out in these stairwells, you'll have a lot less cleanup, a lot less kind of ongoing maintenance, to make it a little easier for public works and reduce that load on them. Increased visibility, I mentioned, being able to see actually into the structure rather than kind of going from this bright outside space into this dark inside space, trying to make that a little bit less of a like kind of shock as you enter in. So providing a little more light into these spaces and an open, transparent feel. The aesthetic improvements I'll get to here in the next few slides. And finally, a pedestrian friendly environment. Feel like you can walk through there and feeling safe while you're doing so. So here is a new rendering of a typical corner. So this is going to happen on all 4 sides The Sky Bridge enclosure going into the mall will remain completely the same as it is now. But on these corners, we're gonna completely remove that stair tower. The elevator towers will remain. We're not gonna replace those. We still need that vertical access. But it'll be fully open, protected by a roof up above. And the idea is that now, as you're driving along here or as you're walking along here, you can see everything that's happening here. And if you have eyes into these particular areas, people are less likely to kind of hang out there or do things they shouldn't be doing in these stairwells. Along with that, currently there is a brick screen wall along the ground floor. In some spaces, it's probably about 3 feet tall, but in kind of the lower edges of the parkade up towards Union Street, it gets about as tall as I am. Completely opaque brick wall, so you can't really see if anybody's on the other side. That is a really traditionally been a good hiding place for people. So what we are going to do is we're going to take out that brick wall as well, and we're going to replace it with a perforated metal panel. So we still had some screening requirements that the planning department required of us, so we couldn't just open it up like a cable rail or something like that. But we kind of met them in the middle to create this kind of perforated, a lot of circular holes in this metal panel so that you can still see through, but screening for cars and headlights in those parking spaces is kind of dispersed, so you're not blinded by a headlight as you're walking along the sidewalk. We are also going to be adding these vertical fins along the east, south, and west facades. The reasoning behind that is because we are going to need to do some slab repair for the second and the third floors. This was constructed about 40 years ago, so either over time or the contractor just missed it the first time. There are some grout pockets protecting the steel tendons in those slabs that either deteriorated or just weren't filled in, so they're starting to rust. So it's just more of a structural safety sort of concern. So they are going to need to go into these brick areas, peek behind it, take out some of the brick, and inspect the holes to make sure that they are still in good shape. And if they're not, they'll remediate that. So that'll leave some kind of unsightly repair work. So we're going to kind of conceal those with these vertical fins, which will also be lit, which is a perfect segue into the nighttime rendering on the next slide. So the other goal of this project, aesthetic improvements. We want this to be, as you're either going down, this is a view down Liberty, but as you're coming down Liberty or as you're coming down Marion, this sticks out a little bit more than it does right now. It's just kind of a dead concrete and brick structure. So adding a little bit of interest to the corners, providing a bigger sign with highlighting the Marion, and then having lighting from the roof along the stairwells. The signage will be backlit and these fins will be lit as well, providing a bit more of an active kind of feeling structure. Yeah, so we think it'll look a lot nicer and more inviting at night. And yeah, we can go back to any questions that we have on this at the end here. Last slide. Construction schedule. So we are currently finalizing our permit documents. We should have those submitted into building and safety within the next week. We have a little bit of cushion in our schedule for getting all that permitting and bidding work done. The main crux of this schedule is we are trying to avoid holidays. So that is when the parkade is used the most for holiday shopping. So in January of 2026, right after the holidays end, is when we're planning to start construction. They're gonna have to go around a corner at a time in order to keep public access to the parkade during construction. It's not really feasible for us to just shut it down for 8 to 10 months and force people to park elsewhere. So we have a conceptual sort of phasing plan in place so that at all times there's access to the sky bridge, there's access to an elevator, stairs can still be used if needed. So having that all in place. So corner one, which I think is going to be the corner of Marion and Liberty, the southwest corner, will be going first, and then they're going to move around the building with the goal of being completed by mid-November, right before Thanksgiving and Black Friday and the major holiday shopping season starts. So yeah, with that, I think that's kind of the end of our presentation here. So happy to field any questions.
Anything going on the inside? Like, is the stall count staying the same, EV charging, mentioned elevators, those things kind of change?
Yeah, could you go back to the last slide? So in large part, the interior is remaining the same. We are going to completely update the interior signage. So give that a kind of fresh new lift. It's kind of a smattering of different fonts and things at the moment. So giving it a consistent kind of branding throughout. But the lighting was updated recently, so it's meeting all of the required light levels that are needed in there. The one thing that I didn't mention, at the top on the third floors on east, south, and west, we're going to be adding some canopies. So there will be some covered parking that supports a PV array with the goal of providing all in all, the energy requirements for the lighting and the other electrical components within the structure, and providing kind of a credit to the city each month for that usage. But in regards to parking, the count is going to stay almost exactly the same, maybe plus or minus like 10 spaces. But then like the first and the second floors will remain exactly the same, save the signage. Yep.
I remember in an earlier presentation, there was something about the brick walls not being in compliance with code or something like that. Was there, just out of curiosity, was there like a variance provided for the project, or how did that get worked through?
So this was done 40 years ago.
Right.
I don't know about the brick screen wall specifically, but the main issue with it right now is that it's too high for what planning standards are. So yeah, anywhere from like 3 feet high to probably about almost 6 feet tall. So with this replacement, we're going to have that perforated panel that's just going to be 30 inches tall. Is that true? 36 inches tall, consistently across, and then having that kind of transparency aspect to it. So you're able to see in and see out.
And will the existing landscaping remain the same or intact, or will there be improvements in that too?
The landscaping, there basically is none. There were landscaping beds that were in between these columns, but those got filled in at some point. So no, there is not any landscaping. The one thing that I also didn't mention here with these renderings is that we are planning on removing the Union Street entrance. So there's currently an entrance right in the middle of that street between Liberty and High. The goal of that being we're limiting access to the Liberty side and the High Street side, but also kind of reinforcing that pedestrian friendly, the Union Street improvements that have already been made. So that driveway will be removed. It'll be infilled with sidewalk and landscape that matches the adjacent area. So that'll be the one kind of landscaping element of this project.
That's paid parking, right?
No.
CCTI uses that a lot. We use it at the SPDC quite a bit, so that Union Street closure is interesting.
And this kind of aligns with the city's move towards surface parking being paid surface parking here in July. So this will be free, planning to continue to be free. So making it a more inviting kind of space, because people will probably be moving towards the free parking.
And then at least last question for me, will that fleet pen cage thing still remain?
We have, yes,
Big nod.
we have no instruction to remove it.
Alright,
What's the total cost of the project?
Currently, we're projecting it out to be about 6 to 6.5 million.
And where's the funding coming?
Just part of the budget.
That's really.
It's going through that one.
any other questions for Daniel? Daniel, well done, thank you.
Thank you.
And you can take off or hang around for paid parking update, but that moves us into our last information report for paid parking latest. There's 2 pages in our sheet here, but
That'll be me.
it'll be you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this will be brief because we'll have Sarah at the next meeting to go into more detail. It was just giving you, I think, with everything moving forward with each meeting, we'll let you know what the status is because we're ramping up the June and July. The equipment is being shipped now. We're getting some, I think, next week. We'll do to make sure everything's running properly. And then we'll get the bulk of it later in June. Activity, installing all that equipment and I can go live in July, so. The next several months will be a lot of activity, so we're doing what we can, the group has done, Sarah, the parking group has done an excellent job getting communication out there. So just send the information to you guys as soon as it went out as well, so you can keep appraised, in case anything gets brought up as you're going downtown.
What's the goal of the existing parking meters that the city has? Is the goal to shift everything to this infrastructure? And is that happening first or second?
That will happen second, but it's gonna be within the same time.
Do you know what app was the app selected?
Yeah, it's the beep sound, so it's on the front,
Well, that's
it'll be an
the,
app you can download, yeah, that was the app, so
So you license it and brand it
yeah, we
basically.
do all that.
the
Copyright.
sound specific, right?
Yes.
Sound specific,
Where is it starting? Is it just everything?
that's a good question, I don't know the phasing, Sarah will have more information, unfortunately, I don't have all of it, but let's, you want to. I know.
I don't have to install.
Yeah,
It's all gonna go live at the same time, but in terms of the map for installation. And the go live date, we're targeting July 1st, it's going to be July 10th. We needed to push that out to accommodate the ordinance going to the.
So how will tourists be, I mean, if you're just coming for a day, you don't have the app. Will you be able to pay with credit card?
yeah, so that'll, you can do coin, credit card, just be like, pay, like Portland, if you're familiar with that, it'll prompt you so you can download the app. So you can search it.
I'm thinking like Portland uses parking kitting.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of global, isn't it?
It's, well, that's only Portland.
Yeah, it's only Portland.
Portland.
Because all of these apps are proprietary and only for the community.
They just rebrand name
Yeah.
to be whatever
But I
name.
remember using like Italy app, which is, that I used somewhere in the US, so there's some global apps.
Yeah. I think a lot of communities have their
They're small.
respective, apps that they use, so. I only use Portland as a reference because it'd be like that, so if you want to pay coin, you can do coin, card.
It's pretty efficient. Yeah. Are we gonna have zones like they have?
No.
No?
All the same. Or they can use the garage.
Yeah, you can use the garage,
Yeah.
you can park it free.
So it's all for free.
Maybe they'll get used more.
And Ernesto's question, we're not planning zones right now, down the road.
Yeah.
Based on demand, we might have a
You might have to
downtown
use-
zone that's different from a
Different pricing.
capital, so.
The Portland is zones. You can
Yeah.
do a zone and then you go.
They're like one block size, so they're real.
They are very,
Yeah,
very.
real small, so you doing any kind of,
But here we'll be able to
Area
move your stuff.
We will, yeah, you could park here and let's say you pay for 3 hours and you park here and then you have to go to the Capitol. You're still covered for that 3 hour.
So that's even better. For the consumers.
Well, we all know why we're doing this because of the state of our budget and what it's been like for the past few years, so. I think it'd be really important and I think a priority for the board to monitor the model financially to see how it's going once it gets implemented. That'd be great to have a fixed report on that. If it's not too much work, I don't imagine it would be, but.
Is that something, you gotta get the,
Yeah.
so is that something next month, because I know they've been running analysis and all that kind of stuff, is that something that could be presented to us next month of like where it sits currently?
We have revenue forecast.
Yes.
And the revenue forecast is not super tight, it's 1.4 to 1.7 million. We're gonna be monitoring this very closely because that's also going to tie into timing of rolling back the.
So that's net.
Yes,
Net.
no, that's
Gross
gross,
business
that's gross.
tax loss. That's gross, because
That's
we,
just for, that's gross meter revenue.
because we will lose some business tax,
Yes, so this, yeah, I'm only speaking the estimate for the metered revenue.
but net is positive, otherwise we will lose.
Oh, well, yes, that is possible.
Yeah.
Be nice
Is it
to-
in this budget, 2025 budget, those numbers?
Yes. I think we put in 1.4.
yeah, we want
Yeah,
that.
we went to the
1.6.
lower, speaks, we got uncertainty.
And then usually we get usually I'm used to seeing in our agenda the branch report and then the lot income, this new lot income. That did just not make it in this time.
But you get that every time, I can look at it and see, okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay, I just it wasn't critical, it's just I just noticed it wasn't in here and then, because it'd be so interesting besides seeing the impact revenue wise, and then the forthcoming closure of the parking district, which would be a great day in Salem Street, maybe, probably. And a big relief for a lot of people, but also to see the impact on the garages and the capacity of those. As we know how underutilized the garages are, well, 2 of them, Liberty's pretty subscribed, but you know, that interfaces with.
The space behind us here, I would anticipate seeing a dip in that revenue. With Rudy's closure, it's not significant.
Wait, I heard Rudy's reopening next week.
Did you?
Honestly, I'm not even kidding.
Usually on our agenda, there's also what's happening downtown, maybe we shelve that.
What's else is happening?
Is there any other questions on the paid parking or requests for anything with the vendor or Sarah? Is there anything?
Not very too much negative.
It'll be exciting, a year and a half from now, when we're looking at a budget that looks a lot better than it has in the past several
And I
years.
think phasing out the parking tax will be.
Yes, I think that's the key piece of information that people need to know.
So, food for thought, based on last night's budget meeting and some of the conversation that occurred. This is not direction, but it could come back as additional conversation or you take that by the council. There were a couple comments last night, one about the tax. And could that be maintained and be used to fund downtown police? So,
But we're already spending.
so I don't know if that's gonna get any legs with council, but with the shift in council, new council members and the budget crisis. They're asking questions and looking at things that were sort of resolved with the prior council. And there's a lot of education that needs to occur about commitments that have been made regarding the parking tax and then just the history of the parking tax and the research into what it can and cannot be used for. But because it was discussed at the budget meeting, I wanted to bring it up so it's not a surprise to anybody who hear it. That's absolutely not something the staff is on. Secondly, there was a question asked about dining platforms. And there are a couple of counselors that are interested in seeing that program unwound. So that's something else that I think will be a topic of conversation maybe after we get through budget. And the recommendation would be, let's go back to the downtown advisory board and have the conversation there before council takes it out.
How many dining platforms we have?
Six, yeah.
And those, when those permits were issued, those were issued with the understanding that those are all revocable.
They are.
So there is already built in policies for it to be revoked.
Does the chairs and tables outside of the sidewalk count as dining?
No, well, they're only
Just
speaking
construct.
about the platforms that are in the parking spaces.
Because I thought it was very refreshing to see, like, when I came to Salem, sidewalk seating was not allowed, so that was big European, it was a big shock. So thank God we have.
Is there an analysis being done by the consultant about how, if they stay, what dollars would be associated with those? Because, you know, or does the current fee they're paying maintain it?
The consultants aren't doing that work, but we are, so with this upcoming fiscal year, we're doing a small increase. Then that allows us time to do that analysis and work with the businesses to see, you know, if we go to full cost recovery based on lost meter revenue, would they still want it?
It's a good job.
Likely not wanted it.
Was that one of the drivers, because platforms take up parking?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's not a driver for the conversion part, it was a driver for the conversation about should we keep them, but it really wasn't about the revenue as it was about equity. So the councilor that raised that question felt that it was very unfair that a business that's food-based, a restaurant could have the space and rent the space basically. But if you are an art gallery or have clothes, you can't put your merchandise out into the spaces.
And that is a current restriction.
What would I do in the street?
Should
My
It helps wash the clothes when it rains on it.
Yeah.
It's to make them off the top of the
That's
dress.
interesting.
Yeah,
I love
very-
your
Put
information.
some wedding
Very
gowns out
I'm just trying
in
to.
sunshine.
Silver.
How about wedding gowns in sunshine?
Yeah, I just,
put it in.
if there's
Summer.
revenues that
Dressing
we don't
gowns.
found, I shall find it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But for real, in code wise, is there a sidewalk sale, like can you have a ramp sales like that?
Yeah, but this isn't sidewalks, this is
Sure,
parking, yes.
But to speak towards the equity portion, is that a thing that is allowed in sale?
I think we have them in the
I
past, I think.
I think you can.
As long as it's not in the
Side, yeah.
pedestrian.
Right,
Class
as long as
number.
you keep the open area.
Sure, I would assume, but I
Yeah.
always do that
And it
for
doesn't-
like,
It doesn't,
But the use of the platform is restricted to food and
They-
beverage
It is,
currently,
they're outdoor dining, it's an outdoor dining
dining
program.
only.
Well, I would hope that any consideration for removal of those, they all know to sign up for it, then permits are revocable, there'd be a ton of notice. So that they're not, you know, of course.
And, yeah, and again, I don't know that it will get legs or if there would be any other counselors that are interested in it. I think a lot of this is just, it's new counselors and they're learning and they don't have the
So
history.
brainstorm.
Yeah, they are, and so this is part of the process. I just wanted to bring it up because if anybody watched last night or did go back and watch the video, I don't want, and you guys talk with downtown businesses, I don't want anybody going, oh my gosh, you know, what's happening here, we don't know anything about this, and come to you, and you don't know anything about it, so that's the only reason.
You just gave me an idea. I will ask the bank to put summertime teller rooms on the outside on the side. How about that? Good plan.
Let's do it.
That's innovative, very innovative.
On the trails.
Okay, well, is there anything else for the good of the order? Tori, thank you. And thank you, staff, everyone for being here. With that, I think we can adjourn. Our next meeting is on May 22nd,
Thank you, guys.
and a half hour earlier. Look at